Greeting to all my tech heads out there in the KevTechify Nation, and if you're new here, welcome. In this episode, we're going to look at an introduction to access control lists. We'll be discussing what is an ACL, packet filtering, numbered and named ACLs, ACL operation, and then finally we'll look at some examples of setting up an access control list. This episode is part of my series on network security. I'm Kevin here at KevTechify. Let's get this adventure started. An access control list, or typically referred to as an ACL, is a series of iOS commands that are used to filter packets based on information found in the packet header. ACLs can be used to limit network traffic. Now, a couple examples on how we can use ACLs to limit this network traffic to improve your network performance. One, think about a corporate policy that prohibits video traffic on the network to reduce that network load. So you're not going to allow any video traffic. Another example could be a policy that can be enforced using access controls to block that video traffic. Then ACLs help to provide traffic flow. Think about a corporate policy that requires that routing protocol traffic be limited to only certain links. You're only going to send routing protocols out on certain links. Now, that policy can be implemented using access control lists to restrict the delivery of routing updates to only those that come from a known source. So you're going to limit and say only updates that come from a known source, one of our devices, we're going to only allow those. We can also provide a basic level of security for network access. Now, how a corporate or a company would do that is they'd set up a corporate policy that demands access to the human resource network be restricted only to authorized users. So only people that have permissions to be on that HR network can actually access that network. So what we do is we'd set a policy up that enforces using access control lists to limit access to those specific networks. We can filter traffic based on traffic type. Now, we could have a corporate policy that requires that email traffic be permitted into a network, but that telnet access be denied into that same network. How you do that is you'd set up a policy that can be implemented using access control lists to filter traffic by type. We can screen hosts to permit or deny access to network services. Your corporate policy requires that access to some file types like FTP, HTTP be limited to only certain users on your network. What you can do is set a policy that uses ACLs to filter out user access to those services. And finally, provide priority to certain classes of network traffic. Here we'd be looking at corporate traffic that specifies that voice traffic be forwarded as fast as possible to avoid any interruption. So what you would do is you'd have a policy can be implemented using access control lists and quality of service to identify voice traffic and process it immediately. If you like this episode on Introduction to Access Control Lists and you get value out of it, and depending upon the platform you're using, please click that like button, give a 5-star rating, leave a comment. Doing this supports the channel, which in turn helps me bring you more great content. Click that notification bell to turn on notifications and be alerted every time I release a new video. There is a lot more episodes headed your way. You can also visit my website at KevTechify.com for all my details and how to get these episodes in video and podcast form. Packet filtering controls access to a network by analyzing the incoming and or outgoing packets and then forwarding them or discarding those packets based on certain criteria. Packet filtering can occur at either layer 3 or layer 4, and Cisco routers here support standard and extended access control lists. So right here we have our OSI model, and on our OSI model, this is where packet filtering happens. at the transport layer and at the network layer. When we talk about numbered access control lists, these ACLs can have certain numbers. So standard access control lists are either in the first range here. So this is a standard API. It's either 1 to 199, or there's a second range, and this is the expanded range. Right here, this is expanded. It can go from 1300 all the way up to 1999. Those would be for our standard ACLs. Extended ACLs start right here. So we have our standard ACLs, and they go from 100 to 199. And then we also have an expanded range here that goes from 2000 to 2699. That is our expanded range here for our extended access control list. Named access control lists, these are the preferred method to use when configuring ACLs. Specifically, what I'm talking about here is standard and extended ACLs can be named to provide information about the purpose of that ACL. Down here, we can see that we use the IP access list, and we're creating an extended one, and then we named it here. This name can be used to identify what that access control list does. Here, it's an FTP filter. We are filtering out we are filtering out our FTP traffic. What we're doing is we're permitting any FTP and FTP data with that access control list. ACLs define the set of rules that give added control for packets that enter inbound faces, packets that are relayed through the router, and packets that exit outbound interfaces of that router. Now, an inbound ACL filters packets before they are routed to that outbound interface. If a packet is permitted by the ACL, then it's processed for routing. And what we have here is we have traffic coming in. So on an inbound ACL, and a lot of times ACLs are drawn sort of as funnels. Now, I'm not the best drawing in the world, but the big side here represents there's a whole lot of traffic coming in. And then that access control list here only allows certain traffic out. So we have a lot of traffic coming in, and then only certain traffic coming out. Because it's filtered before it gets to R1 here, it doesn't have to go through all that processing. Now, inbound ACLs are best used to filter packets when the network attached to an inbound interface is the only source of packets that need to be examined. So what we're saying here is we have our network here, and all this traffic that needs to be filtered, this network is the only source of that traffic. And so what we can do is just process that, and then that way the router doesn't have to get overloaded or give extra processing to the discarded packets. An outbound ACL filters packets after being routed. And what we're talking about is over here, we have our filter. We have the big funnel going down to a small exit. And so we have all this data coming in. We have all this data, but only certain data is allowed out. Now, incoming packets are routed to the outbound interface, and then they are processed through that outbound ACL. So when data comes in to our router here, the router then processes it. It looks at the routing protocols on it and says, okay, this is the way we're going to send it to get to its destination. And so it routes it, but as it exits the interface, it goes through this filter. The outbound ACLs here are best used when the same filter will be applied to packets coming in. And so we have web traffic over here that's coming in to our device. If we have another network that has web traffic also, and let's say we even have a third one that has web traffic. If we're going to filter that web traffic, instead of doing it on 3 inbound interfaces, do it on one outbound ACL. It was my pleasure to provide you with this wonderful episode on Introduction to Access Control Lists. If you like this episode and you got value out of it, and of course, depending upon what platform you're using, please click that like button, give a 5-star rating, leave a comment. This all helps me bring you more great content. Please take a minute to subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell. Also, all my socials and contact information are on my website, KevTechify.com. You can get all of these episodes in video and podcast form. In the upper right is my playlist for my series on network security. In the bottom right is one of my favorite videos that I picked just for you. Thank you so much for watching this episode on my series of network security. Once again, I'm Kevin. This is KevTechify. I'll see you next time for another great adventure.